Well, thank you everyone for coming this early, kicking off your ECC with us at Open Source AI Summit. It's one day we will have an AV system, but I think AI will come first. So yeah, if you have any questions during, scan the QR code, and we'll have a kind of a session to answer them, which is really exciting. But let's dive in to kind of why open source AI and user-owned AI is needed. So for those who are not familiar with me, my background is in machine learning and AI. I worked at Google Research, leading a team working on question answering, machine translation, the kind of before Gemini, if you ask questions on google.com, we were actually having models that were serving those answers. And we actually had a challenge, which what we used before was too slow. Like state-of-the-art models were too slow to actually serve in production. Right? Google has very high demands on latency. And the models, if you're trying to answer questions, you need to read every article in their search results, which takes time. And we were looking for something that would be able to really respond quickly to your questions and be able to kind of read all the, potentially tens or hundreds of pages of text instantly. And the benefit is the modern hardware is highly parallelizable, right? GPUs as well as other accelerators can actually process in parallel, thousands and tens of thousands of mathematical operations. And so the work we introduced as transformers, which is what all of the modern kind of deep learning AI technology is based on, was really trying to solve that problem. How do we, in parallel, read as much content as possible and really not block on kind of reading one word at a time how humans do this. And so Transformers is really this model that is powering now ChatGPT, Midjourney, Gemini, Llama, etc. And I left Google kind of thinking that we can use this technology now to teach machines to code. And I'll talk more about kind of that concept. But that's what Near AI started with. And this was 2017. We did not have Microsoft money to buy tens of millions of dollars of GPUs. And so what we were trying to do, we were trying to collect better data. We were trying to engage lots of students, computer science students around the world who would write code for us and write comments for code. Now, if you engage students, right, students don't have bank accounts. Students usually are from Eastern Europe, from China, from Southeast Asia. And so sending money from US as well is kind of complicated. And so that's actually how we got into crypto, is because we were trying to solve our own problem. We were trying to send money globally, easily in programmatic way. And there's nothing in kind of traditional fintech that works that doesn't require like huge setup and setup for the students. And crypto back then, right, this is 2018, did not have anything that would actually allow to do microtransactions. We were sending, 10, 15 cents to people, maybe a few dollars, and not cost, Ethereum, Bitcoin would cost, multiple dollars to send something like this. And so that's how Near protocol was born, is actually from a necessity of ourselves, trying to solve our kind of data acquisition problem for AI. And obviously Near has been evolving ever since. We launched in 2020. We have a massive ecosystem, but kind of bringing this back to AI, what we see now is a very kind of challenge to the vision we established. Right? The vision we established is how we want all people to control their assets, data, and power of governance, power of choice. This is a vision that kind of, I think, all of the Web3 shares, right, where we want people to be in control, and we want not to have any kind of intermediary or parties who are pretty much taking this away from us. And the challenge we're facing now is that kind of the big tech companies, right, with the use of generative AI, with the use of kind of, even before machine learning more broadly, are starting to kind of warp the business models. They kind of turn what before, Reddits and Stack Overflows into just the data complements, acquiring their data to turn this into their product. We have a challenge where, all of your data is kind of naturally ends up in ownership of these companies without your ability to really control that. It gets data leaked, it gets misused, it gets used as a product. And we have kind of this, erosion of trust that's happening across the board, and a lot of it spans from kind of the algorithm that's trying to maximize the kind of your engagement with the platforms, right? Like the social media is eroding trust by like naturally trying to maximize like, oh, how you're going to spend more time on this. And like one of the core problems is that these tech companies are at the core trying to maximize how much time you're spending on them. Right, that's how the advertisement model works. Right, it's based on your attention, and the only way for them to continue growing revenue is to grab more of your attention. And so they will do whatever, like naturally, to maximize that. And so at the same time, kind of this flywheel of more money invested in more data acquisition, compute to train bigger models leads to the fact that these companies will have control over kind of humanity's intelligent tools, right? Like we're assuming that AI will continue evolving, it's getting smarter, it's getting more skillful, and if only few companies are really controlling how you can use this, what you can use it for, we're in a very weird world, right, where pretty much somebody's kind of controlling access to this amazing resource. And finally, the AI regulations, right? You have the flip side where people are freaking out that it's going to do bad things, and so instead of figuring out a framework how to pretty much have a setup in the world that works with AIs, instead we're like, okay, we're going to regulate the companies that do an AI, and this threatens open source, right? Like naturally, the big companies are going to have their representatives as part of these regulatory bodies. They will protect pretty much themselves, so they'll say, okay, well, we'll have this review committee that will make sure everything's okay. And then at the same time, they're not managing the risks that are actually there, which is centralization of this power and misuse of it by these companies. So, and we see this right now, already playing out across a number of different, angles where, companies are using data from an IP, which again, this is like we're using an old framework and we're not evolving our laws kind of with the new technology that was introduced. We have obviously, all of the kind of misleading and kind of drama pretty much happening around Google, OpenAI, and others. And so this is just like an effect of what's happening, right? We're at this precipice of change, and we really don't have kind of a good alternative right now. We're kind of converging into this like centralized models. And so what we're trying to introduce here, right, and kind of the reason why a lot of us are here is to bring kind of not just AI, but also this ownership and an ability to kind of have these models focused on you as an individual and the community's success, right? And so that's what we call user-owned AI. And it uses Web3 as kind of underlying technology to create incentives, which don't exist right now in open source, to create kind of wide distribution, that we know we can do with Web3 now, and really kind of leverage this core root of user ownership that we've been building with Web3. And that's kind of what we're trying to do at Near, really bring this all together. Now, this new user-owned internet, as we call it, right, is going to be built on this kind of traditional stack, on traditional operating system, on traditional internet. But it will need to have new layers, right? It will need a layer of personalized and creator data, right? Right now, all this data ends up in the servers of Facebook's and Google's. We need a way for this data to stay with you, to stay on your side, and also being able to kind of trade it with others if you're a creator or provide it and kind of have a platform. You need the user-owned AI platform, right? Something where models are on your side and optimizing your success. You need this trustless interaction layer, which is blockchain, P2P communications, cryptography, all of those things we're building. And you need an experiences layer, right? Layer that actually decomposes current monolithic apps, right? You download Facebook and it has all of the things. That you have Android phone and it has like 50 different Google apps, right? That kind of all working together. You need to decompose that experiences to leverage a stack and open it up as a platform. And one of the challenges we're actually facing is that AI and Web3 are actually speaking different languages, right? Where Web3 has been, kind of extremely front on the self-sovereignty and kind of really creating a mind share around what future can look like. But at the same time, kind of it hyper-focused on solving problems that very kind of small number of people really care about, right? Yes, there is, problems of decentralization. There's problems of switching costs, but the kind of hyper-focus on, is this layer 2 approach, is that layer 2 approach, is this kind of infrastructure or this infrastructure will be the solution, ends up being kind of the conversation that most of people don't really care. And the same thing happened with like the speculation that is driving Web3, created a lot of wealth, right? We have kind of amazing, successes, but it has not created as much value as it created wealth, right? And that creates kind of a very lopsided setup. So we have things to fix. And just to give you kind of few points, right? This is AI chart versus crypto chart, right? On crypto, we're looking at prices. On AI, you look at loss and success criteria of your models, right? And it's like that's the difference at the core. You actually want your loss to go down, not your price. And similarly, when we're talking about tokens, like in AI, you talk about tokens that actually producing words and actually producing like interesting results, having chain of thought, etc. And on crypto, we're talking about tokens as assets. So we literally have like a difference in view between AI and Web3. And so that's one of the things we need to start solving if we want to kind of bridge this gap. And so Near Foundation been focused on how do we make Near the home of user-owned AI, right? This is kind of part of this new internet vision that we're building. We built the blockchain. We have kind of chain abstraction stack to enable kind of this abstraction of the blockchains under the hood. And now we're bringing this user-owned component to AI as well. And the reason why we're well positioned is because obviously me and my co-founder Alex as well have AI expertise. We're bringing a lot of the kind of bridging this gap between the language and mindset that right now is divided. We do have a lot of users, which is a distribution and kind of way to bring some of this AI capabilities to the users and create value for them, as well as a chain abstraction vision that really connects all of the Web3 together, right? Instead of having the zero-sum games of, this blockchain versus that blockchain, is how do we really create value to put it in front of the users? Obviously, Near has been very kind of lucky to be kind of in forefront, and importantly, we have a nonprofit status, right? Which I think is really important as we're developing these technologies, because kind of what we've seen so far with startups that are raising funds, they end up kind of in this very weird setup where they need to start monetizing what they built even before they actually got to a stage where this can be successful. And so they end up, need to raise at high valuation, need to justify that high valuation by making a lot of money, and so they need to be extractive naturally to actually be successful. Or they will end up like, stability and inflection where they're getting bought out and kind of dismantled to pieces because they couldn't manage this balance. All right, so maybe just defining more what is user-owned AI, right? So importantly, it's about optimizing for users' well-being. So to contrast it, right now, when I'm building a model at Google or even Meta, the way I'm going to do this is by making set of decisions, right? I'm going to make decisions what data goes into the model. I'm going to make decisions on what's, maybe some data is kind of not considered legal because of copyrights. Maybe something will not be ethical. Maybe something just leads to issues with evaluation sets I'm looking at. And so the evaluation sets and kind of the way I'm going to launch these models will always be A/B testing on success of the company I'm working at, right? Which for all of these companies is revenue. And so the way you launch this models, you A/B test if it generates more revenue if you launch a model, right? You're not going to launch something that's going to generate less. And so this is very kind of opposed to the kind of success of individual users, right? It's in a way like, is it able to grab more attention from you, to monetize it, to show you more ads? Versus, is it making me more successful? Is it growing my net worth? Is it making me more mentally kind of and educationally more successful? And so that's really kind of the change here. The change here is how these models are tested, how these models are launched. And it can be still the same kind of set of core technologies, but the kind of research and benchmarking you do is different. And importantly, users then maintain all of their data and able to offer it for sale if needed. Now, you also want to, as I said, kind of go away from this monolithic experiences, but actually, as a user, decide what you want, right? Oh, I want to grab, a social graph from here, and I want to build maybe a note-taking app, right, that shares with my social graph, and I say, and I want to use AI to summarize, when I want to look at it. You can actually create your own apps in this world where you can actually specify and specialize what you want. And finally, the important part is to create a model where everybody benefits, right? Not just kind of few companies that are able to do this and everybody else kind of sitting on sideline, but actually combine this into a single model where everyone benefits. And this is complicated, so it's not easy, and this is something that we, all as an ecosystem need to work on. This is not going to be a single project or a single company making. This is going to be a whole stack of projects and companies and kind of approaches. Some of them are going to be competing with each other to really form. And so this is kind of high-level user-owned AI stack, which combines a data layer where you have, crowdsourcing, data acquisition, synthetic data, data curation. You have a compute layer with models and like both on-edge and decentralized inference training, as well as you have the whole application layer with agentic frameworks and different kind of aspects of applications that are important to continue innovating. Now, at the core, we need this kind of novel way of monetizing open research, right? Again, right now, all of the research is starting to converge to happen in a few different labs. They kind of hire all of the talent out of universities, because in university you don't have a way to get access to enough compute, and then they stop publishing as well. So you cannot even use the recent research unless you hire someone out of that to actually bring that knowledge. And so we need a way to have novel research done in such a way that everybody can use it, right? It's models and frameworks to use in applications. And you have novel applications now that are actually bringing this functionality to the users, to consumers, to enterprises, to businesses, and then that leads to funding research, right? So this is like open research monetized system that we need to build, like a flywheel that, again, we have lots of different projects on both sides that are now coordinated to build this. And kind of obviously the crypto economy is what we're using to actually set this up. So few things we're doing specifically to help with this. One is AI incubation program that we're running out of Near Horizon, and it's really set to bring some of the top projects in this stack to really kind of integrate with each other and with broader ecosystem and help them to kind of go to the next stage, help them kind of bootstrap their own distribution, but also showcase how those things are working together. So this is some of the projects we're working with, and kind of to mention some of the specific use cases, so it's not super abstract. We have things like crowdsourcing and community-driven data acquisition, right? How do you bring data, how do you collect data, and how do you human label data that you're able to use in kind of this decentralized training and inference time? We obviously need user-generated content monetization, right? You have content that you created. How do you monetize it? The existing systems of trading attention to the users are going to collapse, right? Publishing something on your own Substack, if everybody is consuming content now through AI-generated summaries, is not going to work anymore. How do you actually monetize that? Similarly, all traditional kind of news venues You need a new, open data layer that everyone can plug into, right? Oh, I have, some expertise. I can actually trade it off, create, maybe a virtual clone of myself, or a system that can plug in into some other research, like data that can plug into some other research to fine-tune a model that then brings the skills to everyone. You obviously need GPU and inference marketplaces to enable the kind of applications to be able to use these models, to use some of the latest research that's been done. Specialized foundational models, both on like specific use cases, like Web3 data, as well as specialized for specific skills. You have payments for AI agents, think of Stripe for AI. And again, you'll hear a lot of these projects actually presenting today here. And you have on-edge inference, right, where the data is actually stored on your device, and you're able to kind of make models to do inference on them and decide on what's the best for you individually, not for some company. Now, we're also working on kind of research and development in Near AI. So we brought back Near AI as a company that's focused on open source AI R&D and specifically AI developer. And so we're kind of combining these three goals into one effort. And this effort is, how do we really organize open source AI research and development? Right now, you have closed source AI R&D that's happening in big companies, and you have open source happening in academia, but they have very little kind of ability to do more advanced things. How do we make this then accessible to everyone, right? You as a developer should be able to plug into it, right? Whatever's done by Web3 folks or by Web2, by academia, by other researchers. And then how do we put it all together to create next kind of innovation around AI developer? So kind of super high level sketch of how this works is we have so-called Near AI Hub that really combines a novel research, right? You have kind of contributors that are open sourcing and working on different assets in exchange for access to compute and data. Again, many academia doesn't have access to novel data, as well as they don't have capacity to go and crowdsource new expert data to actually improve the models. We have, data side, which is a combination of different projects that are doing crowdsourcing, synthetic data generation, and various other data marketplaces and data acquisition. We have compute, right, with decentralized compute, with kind of from GPUs to inference to training. And we have Web2 applications and Web3 application developers who are actually using all of this in their applications, bringing their use cases, and importantly, bringing their benchmarks, right? If I'm building something, the first thing you should do is build a benchmark that evaluates exactly what the use case you're trying to do and how well the current model is doing. As soon as you publish that benchmark, you activate the researchers who actually can now go in and see what are the different models and different aspects and different data needed to actually improve this. And so you have kind of this research loop created to then pull in compute and data to actually innovate on the use cases people want. So open source AI R&D, as I said, novel human labeled data sets, right? Extremely important and extremely missing right now. Variety of standardized benchmarks, so to ensure that everybody's making progress on very specific set of capabilities and skills in this. Agent interaction framework. This is how kind of making sure we have a generic enough system that is able to be used then for everything from AI developer to doing financial research to maybe executing some actions in the browser on behalf of the organization. And standardized kind of framework to train and fine-tune models so that everybody can actually reuse everyone's work. I don't know if you've tried like open source AI code, but all of it is like in different formats and completely like hard to reuse. So that's kind of how we're organizing the work of the researchers, both internally and externally, creating this platform for everyone to use. Now, the benefit of organizing it this way is that we can put this all as a simple API, pretty much what similar to OpenAI API that everybody can now use, right? Somebody in MIT created a new agent for example, doing actions in the browser. Boom, you can already use this in your application, same day, right? you don't even need to wait for a paper, right, to benchmark it on your use case. For example, if you're doing customer support, and see if it actually performs better for your specific use case. You have payments embedded, right, through Near for compute, for data access, for kind of running the agents themselves, for environments, and for accessing different other external APIs. So all of this is kind of, you pay once, and then all of the payments, like underneath for all of the resources you use, are done. You have Web3 users, right, who actually can access all of this directly, right? If right now you're going through an application, you're usually interacting with the application. That application can capture all the data because they then passing it to LLM underneath. Now you can access this directly with your Near account, and so you're able to actually have privacy even if applications are actually doing a bunch of stuff. You can use best models and best agents that are available, right, for the benchmarks relevant for you. And you can have businesses adding their own kind of problem sets, benchmarks to really drive research and also ensure what they want. Finally, on our side, kind of we working toward AI developer, right? So this is just a specific application on one side for this research, but on the other side, AI developer is something that changes completely how we interact with computing. And this is why originally we started Near AI as kind of teaching machines to code, because in a way, right now, there's kind of this split where you either know how to code, and then you can pretty much control computers at a different level, or you don't know how to code, and then you either need to find somebody to build stuff for you, or you're using existing software, which doesn't always fit your use cases. And so what AI developers is aiming to do is change that, where make everyone be able to pretty much program software, build software, and tell computers what to do exactly the way you want. And so we focused on Web3 applications in many ways because it requires some novel capabilities, and at the same time, there's huge lack of applications in Web3, right? There's a lot of infrastructure, but we have very little applications. And so what this allows to do is anyone to build their own application on top of existing kind of infrastructure and stack. And importantly, we need to have this new capability of formal verification, formal correctness of the applications and smart contracts, which again in Web3 is extremely important. And this is important for many reasons, because the current code, human-written code, has bugs, right, always. And there's no way to go around it unless you have a formal proof that the code is correct. And the reality is we will need to rewrite all of the code written by humans with AI, because there is a lot of vulnerabilities that are going to be found by AI in the current code. So to give you an example how this works, you will be able to go and say, hey, build a decentralized freelance marketplace, right? It generates a kind of product specification with user stories, with how the kind of application will work. You can actually talk to it and tell it some of the use cases or features you want, or maybe change how it works and kind of interact with we call it AI PM. And then it goes and actually writes smart contract, front end, and middleware code for you. And again, you can iterate with it if you're a developer, but ideally it should work to a level where you don't actually need to interact with it. So this is kind of just showing you a prototype of what we're working on top of this framework I mentioned, right, with kind of AI agent environment. So I'll just finish with this thought, right? The kind of where we are right now is a pretty interesting, but also very dangerous kind of split in the road. On one side, we have closed AI research that's happening in few labs that then gets monetized by trading user attention. And if that is continues to be successful and continues unrolling, the whole Web3 mindset is going to be completely suppressed. Like it's not that we are like, hey, cool, now Google is a little bit smarter. It's the fact that if the Google has all of your attention, you don't have a kind of ability to have ownership of your data. You don't then have ability to own your assets because Google will have all your attention. They may as well just roll out Google payments internally. And so kind of the amount of choice and amount of ability to choose is going to be reducing, right? And we see that Apple doing that more and more as well, even though they're actually preserving privacy. They're trying to preserve privacy, but they're locking up the platform more and more and kind of deciding what can happen on their platform. Or we need to an alternative world, which is not just about values, right? It's about creating more value for everyone. And that is extremely important, I think, differentiation is that instead of few companies are making all of the money in the world, right? We need to figure out how to make everyone more successful and more kind of both economically and in other ways. And this is a huge challenge, right? It's a really important problem, but also like we don't have an immediate solution, right? Crypto been kind of circling around this idea, but we kind of keep falling into, oh, let's figure out how to decentralize this thing or whatever, instead of solving like fundamentally how do we make everyone more successful at the core. And so I think that is kind of, I urge everyone to be thinking about that. How do we create more value for everyone, not just move value around like with another DeFi protocol, and actually bring more productivity to people by doing this in a different way, right? Not building yet another company that's trying to kind of maximize its own revenue. Thank you.